Alright, hey everybody, this is Josh Cook, aka Seizures Palace, and today I'm going to be doing the first video as a part of a new sort of tutorial-ish series that I'm doing, where I put out a song a week, and it's not limited by genre or length or approach or anything like that. I'm just trying to pump out a song a week to beef up my portfolio, get a few YouTube followers along the way, and I think most importantly, teach people some of the tricks that I've learned along the way. And if I'm doing some things wrong, maybe some people will give me some feedback that'll help me become a better producer and composer as well. So I'm always up for constructive criticism. To an extent, YouTube can be pretty vicious these days, but hey, whatever, I can take it. So all that being said, I'm working with Ableton 9 right now, and I've opened up a couple different MIDI tracks, and I'm anticipating that what I'm going to do for today is come up with like a 30-second, maybe as long as 2 minutes orchestral piece, and I'm going to later use that and resample it in an electronic song with a guest artist who will be named at a later time. So all that being said, what I wanted to do for the orchestral stuff was have some held strings, some pizzicato strings plucked, harpsichord, I love harpsichord, and also some sort of drum thing, right? Some drums. So I have here one instance of Contact opened up. If you've never used Contact, you should, because it's awesome. It's like the world's best sampler. I'd say arguably, but I don't think there's much to debate. It's pretty super awesome. So what's with these activate things? I was recently upgrading some of this stuff, so there might be a little bit of activation required along the way. Let's go with string ensemble. So that's sort of the sound that we're working with there. Overall, I'm happy with it. It sounds pretty distant. I'm going to play around with a couple of these different reverb settings here. It sounds a little more distant, a little more like a churchy sort of atmosphere. It's funny, it kind of sounds like it has a longer reverb tail, but I kind of like that one a little bit more, to be honest. So let's go with that. I'm going to create a bit of a harmonic foundation using that. Let's go G minor. That's what I was just playing in. That's like, it's my key. It's my jam. A couple flats, no big deal. All right, let's go from the beginning here. Now's the big debate. Do I do this to a metronome and kind of keep it locked in, or do I just go really free as though they're working with a conductor? I would say, for now, to play it safe, I'm going to go with some sort of metronome in the background. So I'm going to tap tempo an approximate speed of what I was thinking. So we're looking at about 110 beats per minute. I oftentimes find myself around 100 or 110 for more orchestral stuff. But, I mean, that's such a blanket term. I mean, orchestral music can be at any speed, any volume. But I just tend to, like when I'm writing stuff for like short films or anything like that, I tend to stick around this sort of tempo. It's in the middle, and it kind of just has this nice floating feel with strings. So anyway, maybe start around that area, experiment with it. And I mean, it really depends on if you're doing that fast, brass, Star Wars-y sort of stuff or really atmospheric, slow stuff. So anyway, there's a starting point for us. Let's just see what happens. I'm going to toss on the metronome, hit record, and here we go. Not doing too much there, just really playing around with a G minor chord, moving a couple notes around as I go. I realize that I move a lot slower when I explain everything that I'm doing, so not too much to explain there. This is worth explaining. What I'm about to do is I'm going to go into my instruments. I'm going to pull in an external instrument, and I'm going to throw it on this Pitz, which is not pizza, it's pizzicato. Or short form for pizzicato rather, and I'm going to take my MIDI 2 and connect it to Contact, and then I actually have to go, I'm kind of doing this out of order a little bit, but I'm going to go into Contact. I'm going to create something, let's do the same thing, let's do, hold on, I really like solo cello for pizzicato. Let's work with that. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do first of all is I'm going to take this new cello sound. So you can see now in one instance of Contact, I have two instruments open. It's a lot more CPU efficient to do things this way. And believe me, with the system I have, as powerful as it is, Ableton can access up to 2 and or 4 gigs of RAM, depending on how many bits you're working with. I have some 32-bit plugins that I still like to use, so I'm running only 2 gigs of RAM. It's kind of limiting. So you have to find ways to save some CPU power along the way. What's with this demo stuff? I don't know. Again, just updated some stuff recently. Might have to play around with that later. I'm going to switch this to pizzicato. We won't be able to hear anything right now. I have to do some back-end work here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the output of this solo cello and I'm going to create a separate master output channel. And you'll see that down here it creates a little cello solo thingy. And from there, there's two other things. So right now, MIDI is on channel 2. That's a good thing because this first one up here is going to be on channel 1. So remember that. MIDI is on channel 2. The next thing we have to do is go down to this mixer here. And notice that right now we have 1/2. So that's our, it's called ST1, which is like stereo 1, but we can rename it held strings, held st. So we also have the cello here. I don't want it on the same channel as this 1/2. So I'm going to put it onto the auxiliary 1. And auxiliary 2. Select OK. It's telling me that I have to close it and open it back up to hear it again. So let's close it. We'll go to pizzicato. Remember, over here we were in contact/strings. We're going to be, I think number 1 acts as auxiliary 1/2. We're about to double check that in a second. Sorry, what am I talking about? That's MIDI. Let's go with MIDI 2. And then here we go, aux 1. So that's going to be hopefully clear enough. And now I can use this channel here to trigger the cello, the pizzicato cello that's happening off of this track here. So just a little bit of rerouting. Let's try it an octave lower. Sounds nice. Let's play around with that from the beginning. Blah, blah, blah. Not really liking that. It's kind of noodling a bit. Let's experiment with it a bit more. Not quite. To the F, Josh. To the F. I'm going to come back. No, let's try it a few more times. I kind of like something like that. It's got some repetition, some variation, some movement. I'm probably not going to keep it this way all the way through, but here's what we have. I'm gonna quantize it. I might add some groove later just to humanize it a little bit. Let's keep moving forward. I'm not going to get too picky. Who knows, that part might not even make it into the final cut. I'm just adding some layers, seeing how they all work together, similar to what I was just doing. Adding the next layer, which is under keyboard instruments. I'm dragging in a harpsichord. Boom, boom, boom. Moving forward, we're going down. It's on MIDI 3 naturally. Thank you. Good job, Contact. We've created a new thing here. By doing the same thing, remember, create separate master output channel. There's another way you can do it too. This is, from my experience, the easiest way, so I won't bother confusing things by explaining the other way. Auxiliary 2. Yes, excellent. Good. Yes, yes, I like. Okay, I'm just going to drag this instrument, external instrument rather, over. I'm copying it by holding Alt, so I'm not just moving it from one channel to the next. Still using contact strings. This time it's MIDI 3, and this time it's auxiliary 2. Harpsichord. Let's play with it. I might take down the reverb a little bit too. Let's first duplicate it. I love duplicating things and just double checking how they work together. Not exactly what I was going for. Okay, also, I'm going to offset all this stuff a little bit. I'm going to put this here. I kind of originally envisioned just like a really ominous single sort of sound going on with this. I'm going to do what they call an open voiced chord, where you take the middle note of a chord and bring it up a bit. In this case, up 1 octave. So instead of G, B flat, D, we have G, D, B flat, just opening up the chord voicing a little bit. And that's a really low velocity. These things down here, you guys, if you're already a beginner producer, you might have seen this before, but if you follow my mouse, boom, 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 down to these little guys right here, which we can expand a little bit, these are the volumes or velocities, more specifically, of each of these individual notes. So if you wanted one player, hypothetically, if there was three cellists rather, and the bottom player was playing a nice strong bass part, boom, we can bring that up a little bit. The second person, you can also hold, I think it's command on this particular computer before you touch it, and then you can, rather before you select or click it, and then you can drag the velocity up and down. So maybe the fifth I want down a little bit, and the third I want nice and loud up in the top coming out. So that's what we have. Just want that to hold. Come back to the harpsichord, just setting up instruments. I would normally have all this stuff set up beforehand. So for example, after I'm done writing this song, I could easily go File, Save As, Orchestral Template, and delete all of the song information, but keep all the instruments arranged, and then eventually with all their EQ settings, all their compressor settings, and then it's just small tweaks down the road. You can kind of just get straight to the composition or the composing aspect. And right now, I'm just kind of going step by step to give you guys a more thorough understanding of the process involved here. So, yeah, we were going to get rid of this. I'm going to add a utility device, and I'm going to automate the volume a bit. So I'm just drawing in some volume changes here. Let's hear it from the beginning to see how it's starting. I might, like normally I would map all this to my keyboard and then use volume sliders to kind of feel out the volume swells of the strings. Right now I'm just penciling things in to keep it simple. What I should mention is that after I'm done writing these songs, I will probably go back and detail them a little bit and repost them, or even by the time you hear the first post, it might have been detailed a bit already. Part of the reason for that is because when I'm using the screen capturing program, which is called OBS, and it's free, by the way, and totally amazing. It's like legit free, like not pirated free, but legit free, as producers these days are oftentimes pirating a lot of things and stuff like that. It's like, hey, if you don't have to, don't bother. Just there's a lot of good free stuff out there. So, all that stuff said, it can slow things down a little bit, and I can get glitches and all that other kind of stuff. And I don't want you guys to have to go through that with me. As I wouldn't have it if I was just composing the song. It's just when this other video thing is running at the same time. So I'm just going to keep things simple and then do some of the more heavy lifting afterwards, so to speak, with the big effects and whatever else. So I'm going to, underneath this sort of droned, sustained string part, come up with a harpsichord part. And I'm going to improvise it over a few different layers. Might take a few tries. Let's see what happens. Are we good to go? Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking of what I want my starting idea to be. Excuse me. I want something a bit more harmonically dense. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna give it a shot. Here we go. Alright, there's a weird note in there. Gonna go in and snip it. Quantize, which we will sort of loosen up a bit more down the line. And you know what? Let's do that now. I want to find a good, like, just humanized sort of thing. Nothing too intense. What do we have here? Swinging groove. So that's our groove pool. Pop, Latin, Logic. MPC is normally pretty good just for doing a tiny bit of quantization. Quantize. Rock, swing. Yeah, not exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go with... Let's try out some of this Logic. And then once you drag this in, or I guess double click it, you go back into... double click in your drum beat or harpsichord thing or whatever, and there's a little thing called groove here. You can also do a hot swap to double check how they would all sound back to back. So I'm gonna toss on this Logic 8 Swing 51. Let's listen to it. Okay, so keep in mind that I haven't fully explained the bigger picture of what I'm thinking for this, but when I go to sample this in the song next week, or whenever I finally do get around to it with that guest producer, as mentioned before, I'm thinking the harpsichord part would be kind of cool for like an intro, and then also sort of this pizzicato part for like a breakdown later. I might actually end up disconnecting these, so I'm not too worried about them flowing into one another. They're just meant to be sampled later, so as long as both sound good individually. This is a great thing. Like, I know we're all, as producers, starters more than finishers, dare I say, right? It's a big blanket statement, but how many producers here have 50 unfinished beats, and they were equally as convinced when they started each of those beats that was like, oh, it was the best idea at the time, and they were going to finish it, and then they hit like one small mixing error, like their sub isn't playing properly, or they listen to it on a sound system and get embarrassed because it's like, oh, next to Deadmau5 it's not as loud or whatever, and then they kind of stop working at it. But be a finisher, don't just be a starter. And if you are more a starter than a finisher, this can be a great approach. It's like starting a bunch of small ideas and then using them later for a bigger picture idea. So you can kind of start off by thinking of the macro, and then down the road kind of put it in did I say macro? I meant to say micro, and then later put it in the macro, in the bigger picture. So I want to listen to this from the beginning again. Listen with me. Oh yeah, that string has to come in there. Okay. Don't forget to turn your little plus sign on for an A+ production. Might change some of those notes later, or at least their velocity. Some of them weren't ringing out as much as I would have liked them to. Okay, let's get to drums. I'm excited. All right. What am I doing? what am I doing? Here we go. External instruments. Again, I just could have dragged one of the other ones, copied and pasted it. Contact strings. This will be up to MIDI, what we had, 2, 3, 4, and then it's going to be coming from auxiliary 3. Once we make it, let's make it. Let's do that. I'm excited. All right. It's funny, no one else is here with me. I get into this whisper mode, though, where I'm like really close to the microphone. And it's fun because you have headphones on. But I shouldn't. I should be loud, boisterous, redlining. Sorry if that was super loud. I'm a hyper child. Okay, I am going to take my action strikes, and we're going to just take the hits. I don't need them to come up with a loop for me. Thank you, Contact, for helping out all those noobs. I say that. I'm still the noob. We're all noobs on the inside. But I do want to create my own thing going on here. So we're going to create our own channel, and then that channel is going to be auxiliary 3, as we mentioned. I'm flying through this fast because I already showed you guys how to do this. So if you forget, just look back through the video. It's all in there. You do have to close it. I'm going to reopen it, and give me a second here. Auxiliary 3, MIDI 4. Then we have MIDI 4. Yeah, this is 5, 6, 7, 8. I was in the wrong octave because I was transposed. This, it's a little chime thing. Always reminds me of like Dodge commercials. The new Dodge Ram. Eat a steak with it. I don't know. One of those big like country manly sort of commercials. You end up putting a big set of testes on the back of your truck because that's cool. All right. I just said testes. Who says that? All right. Anyway, let's try adding in some drums, giving it some testes. I'm not getting into it enough. It sounds all muffled. Sounds okay by itself, but with everything else so crisp. I always find that's the case with these drums, actually. I always have to like add some pretty significant compression or EQ or something just to get the slap out of them and the brightness, but it's nice. They give you enough warmth to work with. It must be hard when you're writing this kind of stuff to like, you kind of have to overdo things a little bit. It's like sometimes I'm like, man, every time I use this one particular plugin, not necessarily this one, I have to change the EQ a certain way and dip out all these muddy frequencies and all that kind of stuff. It's like, why would they even give me those muddy frequencies in the first place? Well, what if you're doing a song and that's the only instrument that you have? You want it to have that warmth if it's like as though a cello player is playing right in front of you. Whereas when a cellist is playing in an orchestra, you're going to get rid of a lot of those lows because they're going to be further away. And there's also going to be other instruments that are competing for that low end, whether it be timpanis, bass drum, trombones, whatever else. So you kind of have to cut your losses. But I think that's why they give you all the extra information so you can kind of trim the fat as needed. We're going to go through and just toss on an EQ, just something to excite my playing a little bit. I'll go up around 3.5K, maybe. Get rid of some of that muddiness in the reverb. A little bit of low end beef sitting just above the sub mostly, but some of it trails off into the sub too. Nothing too crazy down on the low end. In fact, I might even roll off maybe everything below 50 hertz. Play it safe. I do want some of it going into the sub. There's not too much action going on there right now.